Imagine voluntarily climbing inside a hollow metal ball that has the exact same interior volume as a corporate elevator. Now, imagine locking the door from the inside and throwing yourself into a swimming pool that is 7 miles deep. This is the glamorous world of deep-sea exploration. Space travel gets all the Hollywood movies and the multi-billion-dollar government budgets. But the ocean is where physics goes to completely lose its mind. If you sign up to command a deep-sea research submersible like Alvin, your workday begins with a level of physical intimacy usually reserved for Victorian prisons. The titanium sphere where you live is roughly 6.5 feet in diameter. You share this space with 2 other grown adults and a mountain of electronic equipment that gets very hot. There are no seats, there are no bathrooms. You will spend the next 10 hours sitting on a tiny plastic cushion with your knees tucked firmly against your coworker's ribs. If you are claustrophobic, this is not a career path. It is a court-mandated punishment. The routine starts at 7 in the morning on the deck of a massive research ship. You eat a very light breakfast because using a plastic bottle as a toilet while 3 feet away from a marine biologist is an experience nobody wants to put on their resume. You climb through the narrow hatch at the top of the hull. The deck crew slams the heavy metal hatch shut and turns the locking wheel. The sound of that latch clicking into place is the exact moment you realize every single life choice you made up to this point was wrong. The crane lifts your multi-million-dollar ball of metal and drops you into the Atlantic Ocean. For the first few minutes, you are bobbing around on the surface like a very expensive piece of cereal in a giant blue bowl. The waves smash against the small viewing ports. You feel sick. Your co-pilot feels sick. The marine biologist is already checking his watch. Then, you open the ballast valves and let the seawater flood the tanks. The bobbing stops. The submarine begins to sink. You are now officially on your way down to a place where sunlight is a mythological concept. The commute to the bottom of the ocean is not fast. You are falling through the water column at a speed of about 2 miles per hour. It takes roughly 3 hours of pure, uninterrupted sinking just to reach the operational area. In the first few hundred feet, the bright blue water slowly turns into a dark navy. By the time you pass 1,000 feet, the color shifts to a deep twilight purple. At 3,000 feet, the light completely dies. You are now falling through a total, unyielding blackness that has existed for billions of years. The only things moving out there are bizarre creatures that look like they were drawn by a toddler who is having a nightmare. To save battery power, you turn off all the internal lights inside the cabin. The only illumination comes from the green and red glow of the instrument panels reflecting off your coworker's sweaty forehead. The water outside the submarine is just barely above the freezing point. Because your hull is made of metal, that freezing cold slowly conducts straight through the walls and into the air of the cabin. The temperature inside the sphere drops to 40 degrees. Condensation starts to form on the ceiling. Ice-cold water droplets begin to drip down the back of your neck. It is exactly like sitting inside a refrigerator that is being shaken very gently by an angry giant. You pass the 5,000-foot mark. The silence inside the cabin is incredibly heavy. The only sounds are the hum of the cooling fans, the occasional beep of the computer, and the sound of 3 adults trying very hard to breathe quietly. You try to make conversation to pass the time. You ask the marine biologist what he hopes to find today. He tells you he is looking for a specific type of prehistoric mudworm. You realize you are risking your life for an animal that does not even know it has a face. But you cannot think about that for too long, because the physics of the deep ocean are starting to take effect. As you drop deeper, the weight of the water above you multiplies. At sea level, the air presses down on your body with 15 pounds of pressure per square inch. At 10,000 feet, that pressure increases to several thousand pounds per square inch. The Atlantic Ocean is no longer just water. It is a giant hydraulic press that is actively looking for any microscopic flaw in your welding. If a single joint on the hull has a microscopic crack, the water will slice through the metal like a laser. The resulting implosion would turn you and your crew into a single tube of high-end meat paste in less than a millisecond. The transition from alive to liquid happens faster than the human brain can process pain signals, so at least you do not have to worry about the hospital bill. You look at the digital pressure gauges on the dashboard. The numbers are climbing steadily. 4,000 pounds, 5,000 pounds, 6,000 pounds. The metal structure of the submarine begins to respond to this incredible load. Titanium is incredibly strong, but it is not completely rigid. Under extreme hydrostatic pressure, the entire hull of the submarine actually begins to compress and shrink. You can physically see this happening inside the cabin. Before the dive, you stretched a small nylon rope across the ceiling to hang your notebooks. Now, that rope is completely slack and drooping into your eyes. The metal walls are wrapping themselves around you like a very tight, very cold corporate hug. And you hear a strange metallic groan from the rear of the vehicle. Your heart skips a beat. You look at your co-pilot. He is pretending to read a clipboard, but his left eye is twitching like a broken arcade game. You decide to ignore the noise because there is absolutely nothing you can do about it anyway. If something goes wrong down here, your emergency plan is simply to stop existing. Suddenly, something massive hits the side of the submarine with a loud metallic clang. The entire vessel jolts to the left. You grab the control stick. The marine biologist drops his pen. You flash the external floodlights into the black water outside your window. You expect to see a giant squid or a prehistoric shark. Instead, you see a very angry, very confused swordfish. In 1967, a real swordfish actually attacked the research sub Alvin at 2,000 feet down. The fish drove its long, bony bill straight into the seam of the submarine's outer fiberglass hull. It got stuck. It could not pull itself out. It spent the rest of the dive thrashing around like a man who got his sleeve caught in a car door. The crew had to cancel the mission and return to the surface with a giant, thrashing predator attached to their vehicle. When they got back to the deck of the ship, the scientists did the only logical thing you can do in that situation. They unscrewed the fish, filleted it, and ate it for dinner. That is the level of professionalism you are dealing with in the oceanographic community. The swordfish outside your window decides you are not worth the effort and swims away into the gloom. You check your depth gauge. You are now at 15,000 feet. You are deeper than the wreck of the Titanic. If the Titanic were down here, it would look like an amateur attempt at diving. The creatures at this depth do not even bother having eyes because there is absolutely nothing to look at. They navigate using rows of glowing spots on their bellies that make them look like miniature Las Vegas casinos. You see a giant isopod crawling through the water. It looks exactly like a common garden pillbug, except it is the size of a professional bowling ball. It spends its entire life walking along the mud looking for dead whales that fall from the surface. It is essentially a giant underwater garbage disposal that has not changed its design since the Triassic period. You admire its commitment to doing absolutely nothing for 200 million years. But you have to focus on driving. Navigating a submarine at the bottom of the ocean is nothing like driving a car. It is more like trying to park a delivery van in a dark warehouse while looking through a cardboard straw. You have no GPS down here. Satellite signals cannot penetrate more than a few inches of salt water. You cannot use radar because radio waves die instantly in the ocean. The only way you can talk to the surface ship is through acoustic pings. You have an underwater telephone that converts your voice into sound waves and blasts them through the water. Sound travels at about 1,500 meters per second in the sea. This means when you say hello to the surface, it takes several seconds for the sound to reach the ship. Then it takes several seconds for their reply to travel back down to you. The entire conversation sounds like a dial-up internet modem that is being slowly drowned in a public toilet. The voice from the surface comes through the speaker. It is heavily distorted by static and whale noises. They tell you that a storm is moving in on the surface. They want to know if you are okay. You press the microphone button. You tell them you are freezing, your leg is asleep. And the marine biologist is eating an egg salad sandwich in a confined space. The surface ship takes 10 seconds to process this information. Then they tell you to carry on with the mission. Corporate management is the same at every depth. You turn on your active sonar system to find the seafloor. The monitor shows a flat green line. You are approaching the bottom of a massive underwater canyon. The thrusters hum as you reverse the motors to slow your descent. The submarine settles into the mud with a soft, pillowy thud. A huge cloud of fine gray silt explodes around the vehicle. It blanks out your windows completely. You have traveled 7 miles, risked total structural collapse, and spent 3 hours in a freezer just to look at a wall of gray dust. You have to sit there for 20 minutes without moving just for the dust to settle. When the view finally clears, you turn on the high-intensity halogen lights. The landscape is breathtakingly empty. It looks like the surface of the moon. If the moon were covered in wet flour. The marine biologist gets incredibly excited. He points at a small translucent lump sitting on a rock. He tells you it is a new species of sea cucumber. It looks like a discarded piece of gelatin that has been left in the sun for too long. You watch it sit there. It does not move. It does not breathe. It does not appear to have any thoughts at all. You realize this sea cucumber has a significantly lower stress level than you do. It does not have to pay rent. It does not have a mortgage. And it does not care about the federal interest rate. It just sits in the dark and eats mud. Suddenly, a loud bang echoes through the front of the cabin. The sound is sharp and clear, like a pistol firing right next to your ear. You freeze. Your co-pilot freezes. The egg salad sandwich stops halfway to the biologist's mouth. In 1960, when the bathyscaphe Trieste made the first journey to the absolute bottom of the Mariana Trench, the crew heard that exact same noise. At 30,000 feet down. One of the outer plexiglass window panes in the entry tunnel cracked under the pressure. The 2 men inside the sphere looked at each other. They knew if the window failed completely, they would be dead before they could even blink. But they had already come all that way, so they decided to just ignore the crack and finish the science project anyway. That is the kind of logic that only makes sense when you are deeply sleep-deprived and 7 miles away from your mother. You check your internal sensors. The hull integrity is holding. The noise was just the external battery boxes settling into their metal housings under the weight of the water. You take a deep breath. Your co-pilot starts breathing again. You decide it is time to use the mechanical robotic arm to collect the mud sample so you can get the hell out of here. You grab the joystick that controls the outer arm. The hydraulic system down here is sluggish because the oil is freezing cold. The robotic arm moves with the speed and precision of a 90-year-old man trying to use an iPad. You carefully guide the metal claw toward the seafloor. You are trying to pick up a pristine sample of untouched geological history. The claw scoops into the mud. It lifts the sample up toward the collection basket in front of the window. As the mud drains away from the metal claw, you see what you have actually caught. It is not a rare volcanic mineral. It is not a prehistoric fossil. It is a crinkled, faded plastic grocery bag from a Walmart in Ohio. Human beings have managed to pollute places they cannot even survive in. You have spent millions of dollars on aerospace-grade titanium just to find a piece of trash that someone used to carry a gallon of milk in 1999. The marine biologist looks disappointed. You look disappointed. The sea cucumber does not care. You drop the plastic bag into the sample box because rules are rules, and you are not allowed to litter in the abyss. You check your power levels. The main battery is down to 30% in the deep sea. 30% battery means it is time to go home immediately, unless you want to become a permanent part of the local reef system. You reach over and flip the switch to release the heavy iron ballast weights. The metal blocks drop off the bottom of the submarine and sink into the mud. The vehicle instantly becomes buoyant. The ascent begins. You are now falling upward. The journey back to the surface is even more boring than the journey down. You have no more work to do. You just have to sit in the freezing cold metal ball for another 3 hours while physics pushes. You back to the air. The cabin smells like damp wool, stale coffee, and the lingering ghost of the egg salad sandwich. You and your crew have completely run out of things to talk about. You have already discussed your childhoods, your investment portfolios, and whether or not a hot dog counts as a sandwich. You sit in the dark, watching the depth gauge count down backward. 12,000 feet, 9,000 feet, 6,000 feet. The water outside slowly changes back from absolute black to that deep twilight purple. You see the first faint rays of sunlight filtering down from the world above. It looks like the most beautiful thing you have ever seen in your life. You finally break through the surface of the ocean. The submarine rocks violently as it hits the waves. The bright afternoon sun blares through the small viewing ports, completely blinding your dark-adapted eyes. You hear the heavy thud of the research ship's crane hooking onto your lifting frame. The winch groans as it pulls your titanium prison out of the water and sets it back down on the wooden deck. The crew outside rotates the heavy wheel to unlock the hatch. The seal breaks with a loud hiss of air. The hatch swings open. The fresh ocean breeze hits your face. It smells like salt, diesel exhaust, and freedom. You crawl out of the hole like a newborn seal, trying to remember how legs work. You stand up on the deck and stretch your spine. Your back makes a sound like a bag of dry walnuts being crushed by a boot. The mission director walks up to you with a clipboard. He does not ask if you are okay. He does not ask if you saw God in the darkness. He wants to know if you filled out the proper hazardous material forms for the Walmart bag you brought back. You look out at the horizon. Over 80% of the Earth's oceans remain completely unmapped and unexplored. We have better maps of the surface of Mars and the dead rocks on the moon than we do of our own backyard. We are spending billions of dollars trying to find a way to live on a frozen desert planet millions of miles away. While down here, just a few miles below the cruise ships and the jet skis, there is an entire alien world full of giant bugs, exploding volcanoes, and ancient secrets that we ignore because it is too dark and too cold. You tell the director you will fill out the forms after you use a real bathroom. You walk toward the ship's galley to find a cup of coffee that does not taste like battery acid. Your next dive is scheduled for tomorrow morning at 8. So what about you? Are you the kind of person who would climb into the titanium elevator to go find prehistoric mudworms? Or are you staying on the beach where the pressure is normal and nobody eats egg salad in the dark? Let me know down there.